All right, we're number one. Get back to work, kids. Show how much you love us by working your childhood away. A new report on modern slavery. Yes, slaves still exist in the U.S. and in other countries. Compounding crises push more people into modern slavery, report warns. Here's a map showing the density of modern slavery. Now, the U.S. is one of the lighter nations in modern slavery, but I will get to how, despite maybe not having as many modern slaves as some other countries, the U.S. is heavily responsible for the modern slave trade in other countries. This does not mean other countries are not also responsible, but I'm an American in America covering American news, so I find it important and interesting and necessary to give the American portion of this. The number of people living in modern slavery is growing, reaching 50 million in 2021, an increase of 10 million in less than 6 years. 10 over the past 6 years. Think about what you've done over the past 6 years. Think about what your life has been like. And over those 6 years, 10 million people around this world have been added to the list of modern slaves. Long-standing factors like conflict. I wonder if the U.S. was involved in that at all. Do we have anything to do with conflict? No. Repressive governments. Do we have anything? We don't bolster or ever support repressive government. No. That's okay. That's no. Yeah, no. Supply chains. Do American corporations play any role in global trade or supply chain? No. Is that? I'm getting okay. No on that. Driving the worsening situation, but additional conditions, including the pandemic. The U.S. had no role in that. Climate-induced migration, U.S. climate change connexione between the U.S. and climate crisis. We don't use fossil fuels, do we? No. So that's I know, but just give me so that's a no. No connection between U.S. and climate-induced migration. And rollback of women's rights. The U.S. is not a thought leader on patriarchy, is it at all? No. Okay, that's a no on that. Have also become major drivers as well, according to a new report from human rights group Walk Free. Of those trapped in modern slavery, at least 27.6 million were in forced labor and 22 million were in forced marriages, with women, children, and migrants disproportionately affected. And, something I admit I don't cover enough, but I don't know that anyone covers enough, is the amount of forced marriages around this world. And I don't just mean arranged marriages. Yes, there are some cultures where there's the arranged child marriages, which is a forced marriage as well. But I mean just people that feel like they have no economic choice. They're just screwed and they just get into a forced marriage. Or more importantly, maybe they got into the marriage willingly, but then the partner, let's say most of the time a man, becomes heavily abusive in one way or another, and they feel they can't get out of said relationship. That still, at that point, becomes a forced marriage, even if it didn't start that way. But anyway, of those trapped in modern slavery, at least 27 million were in forced labor and 22 million were in forced marriages, with women, children, and migrants disproportionately affected. Women and children accounted for more than half of all those who were living in modern slavery in 2021. Women and children, by the way, the U.S. in many areas working very hard to roll back. That's the nice term. To roll back child labor laws that protect children. In many states, they've already done it. They've already decreased child labor laws so that children can work more, can get back to work in America. All right, we're number one. Get back to work, kids. Show how much you love us by working your childhood away until you're miserable and your life is destroyed by age 20. Migrant workers are more than 3 times more likely to be in forced labor than non-migrant workers. So let's stop and think about this. Migrant workers, meaning people who feel a need to migrate for one reason or another. Does the U.S. play any role in that? I don't know, with obliterating societies in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, Libya? Do we play any role in causing migration, causing refugees in that? How about economic forced migration? Do we ever cause any of that in our 32 economic wars we have ongoing right now? Do we ever cause any migration from that? Or climate crisis migration? Do we ever play any role in that? Considering if everybody in the planet lived the way Americans live, we would need 5 Earths in order to sustain things. The U.S. and a few other rich countries are responsible for the vast majority of fossil fuel use and emissions across this world. And some people love to go, yeah, but China actually emits more than the U.S. That is true. However, if you do it per capita, per number of people, China doesn't emit anywhere near what the U.S. does. The U.S. is lapping China in emissions if you talk about per person, which, of course, is the only rational way to talk about it. Anyway, there's not just one crisis. There's conflict, climate change, COVID-19. They've all caused a significant disruption to employment and education and have led to increases in extreme poverty and forced and unsafe migration. You know, another thing that's never said in this article, and perhaps never said by those talking about this article, is that this is also the cause of capitalism. Okay? When you have a system where it's profit over all else, profit over lives, profit over health, profit over environment. When you have such a system, people are forced to do all kinds of things out of economic force. People to sign up to be drug dealers out of economic force. They sign up to be prostitutes out of economic force. They sign up to be soldiers, to kill and be killed out of economic force. There is a massive tsunami of economic force across this world, forcing people to do things they don't want to do. And of course, I tried to list some of the most difficult jobs and the ones where you could often end up killed, but it also forces people into child slavery, where they think they're working to deal with economic force. We're so poor, we're hungry. Oh, you give me a job, great. So what if I'm 10 years old? You'll let me eat food. So you start working. Now, okay, you got to pay off the cost that we paid to ship you over here. So yeah, that means you owe us $30,000. You make about $500 a year or something. You make $1,000 a year. So you'll pay it off in 30 years if there's no interest, and I'm sure there'll be no interest. But a lot of these people are indentured servants that get stuck in it and don't realize there's no way to get out. They can't actually buy their way out. And that's capitalism for you. And here's another quote. And we know when people don't have time to plan a move like that, meaning when they're forced refugee, forced migration, they're more exposed to exploitation, both en route and at the destination. Nations with the highest number of people living in modern slavery included India, China, North Korea, Pakistan, Russia, Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey, Bangladesh, and the United States. 6 of those countries are in the G20. G20 countries import $468 billion of at-risk products annually. So here's another way that the U.S. is probably the biggest cause of this modern slavery, even if we're not the biggest owner of modern slaves, but the biggest cause of modern slavery, both because of our contribution to climate crisis, the countries where we've destroyed them, their infrastructure, the countries where we have destroyed the economically the way for people to have an okay life, to have a sustainable life. And now you add on to it the fact that we are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, importer of these at-risk products made in an incredibly cheap way by slaves, essentially slaves, modern slavery. So we are the ones funding this system, funding this modern slavery system. Quote, the purchasing practices that happen within wealthier countries are actually increasing the demand for goods that is fueling exploitation in countries that are sitting at the front line of global supply chains. So we're the ones funding this thing. And I know some people are like, look, so our country imports a bunch of cheap goods. Not our fault. Would you be saying the same thing for sex trafficking? Would you? Like, well, so what if I paid to have somebody grab someone off the streets in Romania and ship them over here for a few good nights, what I view as good nights? What's that got to do with me? That's a business. It's like, no, we are supporting this system by paying for the goods that are made by slaves. And I've done segments before on, the lawsuits against Nestle for using slave labor, the lawsuits against other companies for using slave labor, but claiming, we don't know what goes on there. I believe there was also some issues with Starbucks, who claims to have fair trade coffee, but doesn't actually go to the farms to see if there's child slaves there, or doesn't enough go to the farms, I guess. Anyway, huge story of the increase in modern slavery that we should all be talking about, but of course, our mainstream media won't be telling you about, or at least not much. At least not for more than a couple of minutes.